My presentation today, as Dave mentioned, is about the Southern Poverty Law Center and its attack on the rights of all Americans. It's largely based on the article which I did, a cover story on this, which is the current issue of the New American magazine, of which I'm the senior editor. This is the print magazine. We also publish the New American online, and this article is also online at thenewamerican.com. We publish probably 20 or 30 times as much online as we do in the actual print magazine. So at the end I'll show you, we encourage you to go to our newamerican.com website. And as I said, it's about, what I'm talking to you today about is the Southern Poverty Law Center and its attack. Now let's see if it's going to work. Oh, there it is. Its attack on the rights of all Americans. The Southern Poverty Law Center is portrayed sympathetically by most of the major media as a champion of rights, and as particularly a champion of the rights of minorities and a protector of the rights of minorities, particularly racial minorities. Its leader and founder, Morris Dees, is regularly featured in major news media accounts, Associated Press, New York Times, LA Times, can be counted on to faithfully give him and his organization coverage any day of the week that they may appear with a new report or a new charge or a new website development. This is their website, the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they say they are standing strong against hate. They are most famous for their regular release of what they call their hate map. And this is a picture of their website showing the map of the United States, purporting to show the numbers there supposedly represent the number of hate groups that are burgeoning across the country. And as they say here, along the top of their website here, it says they are fighting hate, teaching tolerance, and seeking justice. Now, those are worthy goals that all Americans can find sympathy with. However, what I hope to show you in the presentation here, this is going to be an abbreviated presentation. My usual presentation is about an hour. We're going to try to condense it down into a half hour. My apologies, I was supposed to have my half-hour PowerPoint one, but the one that we loaded here was my hour one, so I'm going to have to zip through some of the slides without comment. But what I intend to show here, and what we show in our online and print versions of the article, is that the Southern Poverty Law Center realizes that most Americans are of goodwill. Most Americans are opposed to groups like the Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, Aryan nations, those types of truly groups that can be truly designated as hate groups. So they have determined that in order to discredit their opposition, legitimate conservative and constitutionalist and Christian groups, they will try to sandwich smear them by associating those legitimate groups with the groups that can be truly called hate groups. Now, imagine if you awoke tomorrow morning, picked up the Post-Crescent, and your name was in a headline like this. Instead of it saying Carol Swain, it said your name is an apologist for white supremacists, right across the front page of the newspaper. You can imagine the angst it would give you. All of your friends and neighbors and associates at work and whatnot would be looking at you in rather negative perspective after that. Well, that's what happened to Carol Swain. When Mark Potok, one of the standard faces of the SPLC, he's their director of intelligence, stated Carol Swain is an apologist for white supremacists, and it appeared in the Nashville Tennessean. And this is Professor Carol Swain. Now, she's not your typical profile of what you would associate with being a white supremacist or an apologist for white supremacists. Dr. Swain is a professor of political science and law at Vanderbilt University. Very highly regarded. She is the author of a number of books, including this one, The New White Nationalism in America, Its Challenge to Integration, which was published by Cambridge University Press. Very positively reviewed in all of the major liberal media. So on the surface, by her ethnicity, by her professional vita, and by what she has already written exposing white supremacism and one would suspect that she would be a natural ally of the Southern Poverty Law Center, or SPLC. Why are they attacking her? Well, according to Professor Swain, she is being attacked as payback. Payback for what? Well, she has run afoul of the SPLC because of her stand on immigration. You see, even though she is black and has written against white supremacy, she has been opposed to open borders and blanket amnesty for illegal aliens. So she wrote a book called, or she edited a book called Debating Immigration, which was just that, a book on debating immigration. And she had voices from both sides in it. Because of that, the SPLC marked her as a nativist, as somebody who hated immigrants. And so they have gone after her. And as she said, the Southern Poverty Law Center tries to silence people on a range of issues. It's not just immigration, it's also people that are pro-life, people that are concerned about racial preferences, people that are concerned about same-sex marriages, gun control, immigration, patriots. She went on to say, today, conservatives and Christians, of which I am both, are targeted by groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center that regularly seek to discredit us. Americans have cause to worry. What is happening is a bold attack on free speech and the inner workings of the democratic process. We must not let this continue, end quote. She hits on a very important issue. In the past, attacks on individuals and organizations by the media. As a member of the John Birch Society, I'm well aware of how the media can mischaracterize and smear organizations and individuals, and that's a very nasty thing, and it is not fun being tarred with that kind of a brush. However, what we are seeing now with the Southern Poverty Law Center is something even more dangerous, because, as I will show, the Southern Poverty Law Center, since the Clinton administration particularly, has been wedded with the Department of Justice, the FBI, and now the Department of Homeland Security, so that its characterizations of Americans as being racist, extremist, and dangerous now are being applied by the Justice Department, the FBI, and through their fusion centers, state and local police, to target people with whom the Southern Poverty Law Center disagrees. This is Mark Potok here with Keith Olbermann on MSNBC. He can be seen regularly on PBS, NPR, CNN, ABC, NBC, CNN, etc. Now, Carol Swain said conservatives and Christians are being targeted. And is she exaggerating there? Well, no, not at all. She's not the only black conservative Christian who's being targeted. The SPLC, as I outline in my article, has targeted a whole list of black ministers who they say are engaged in hate. Now, why are they accusing them of hate? Well, they're accusing them of hate because these black ministers, such as Bishop Harry Jackson, Jr. of the Washington, D.C. area, a very prominent minister there, because these ministers oppose homosexuality, homosexual unions, homosexual so-called marriage. Along with him, They've been attacking Reverend Keith Butler, Bishop Wellington Boone, Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson, Reverend James Meeks, and others. If you go on their website for the Southern Poverty Law Center, you will see that they say some very nasty things about them, accuse them of being haters. They do the same thing with other groups and individuals. This is the SPLC website, their webpage called The Enablers, and they target here people, they say, who are prominent media and political figures who are enabling the hate and implying that these folks are promoting racism and race hatred. Who are some of the people they attack? Well, one of those on there is, they call him Dr. No, Ron Paul, representative who's running for president on the Republican ticket. Another one they have on their enabler page is Judge Napolitano. Here is their hate watch page, and again they're going after Ron Paul. They're claiming that he has invited a neo-Confederate witness to testify in Congress. It was a conservative professor who he invited to speak as an economist before his subcommittee in Congress. On this hate watch page, they refer to Ron Paul as a vicious opponent of the Federal Reserve. Well, that's rather interesting. I mean, yes, he is an adamant opponent of the Federal Reserve. He wants to audit it. He wants to abolish it. But vicious is a little bit over the top. I don't know of Ron Paul ever being vicious about anything, but that's just one of the more mild criticisms one could make of Southern Poverty Law Center. This is their page showing their intelligence report. The Southern Poverty Law Center Intelligence Report is their premier publication. It comes out quarterly. It usually features Klansmen on the cover, neo-Nazis, Aryan Nation skinheads, etc. Lots of images about hate. Those are all groups that most Americans find repugnant. Only a tiny minority of Americans are ever affiliated with these groups, and they know that. Here is their most current one. Hate Groups Top 1,000. This is their spring 2011 copy of their intelligence report. As usual, it's an extravaganza of images here. Swastikas, hooded Klansmen, burning crosses, all of those images associated with groups that are truly hateful. So one could be forgiven for expecting that a report like this is going to be filled with details about those kinds of groups, about neo-Nazis, Ku Klux Klan, Aryan Nations, etc. But who do they go after? Well, the whole report, I don't have time to go through it page by page. I'll go through a few of them. This is the front page here, and this is Mark Potok again. And in his first page, who does he go after? The first people he names? Not the Ku Klux Klan, not some grand dragon or whatnot. It's Robert Welch, the founder of the John Birch Society, Glenn Beck, and the John Birch Society. That's who he goes after in the front page. Then on the next page, we have here, again, more of the images, swastikas, a redux of the cover. And who do we have right here? That's Cliff Kincaid, the head of Accuracy in Media, founded by the late Reed Irvine, who passed away a short time ago. It's a media watchdog group. It's a conservative group. But you can see this is the sandwich smear, putting Cliff Kincaid in between those images. Then on the next page, who do we have? That's not a neo-Nazi or Ku Klux Klanman being interviewed there. That's Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council. We go through this whole report, and page after page, there's Glenn Beck again. They've gone after him. We look at the groups that have been targeted over the last few years by the Southern Poverty Law Center. We see Dr. James Dobson, a focus on the family, Beverly LaHaye's Concerned Women of Americas, D. James Kennedy and the Coral Ridge Ministries, Scott Lively and his Abiding Truth Ministries, David Barton and Wall Builders Ministry, American Family Association, Family Research Council, Cal Seaton Foundation, Americans for Truth About Homosexuality, Jerry Falwell and the Liberty Council, the Traditional Values Coalition, Catholic Family News, Christian Action Network, National Organization for Marriage, Gun Owners of America, Peter Brimelow, etc., and of course the John Birch Society and the New American Magazine. Now, we've been writing about the Southern Poverty Law Center and their vicious attacks, and in this case we can actually legitimately use that term. They are vicious attacks. We've been writing about this for many years and warned that other groups would be targeted as well. And now you can see they have spread their net of hate across virtually the whole breadth of America, covering all kinds of groups, ministers and ministries. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has really focused on accusing people of extremism, of hate, of being members of hate groups, of being radical right, and they use the term terrorist a lot. They use the term neo-Nazi and racist a lot, but they very seldom define these terms, and they very seldom apply them with any precision. In fact, these are terms which they have found they can use with great political effect by keeping ambiguity and keeping definitions hazy and applying them across a broad range. In fact, they have done this so successfully for the last 40 years. They've been around since 1971. And they have succeeded in raising so much money, hundreds of millions of dollars, and obtaining favorable coverage from the media that they have become supremely arrogant. As I mentioned, during the Clinton administration, they became illegitimately wedded to the Justice Department under Janet Reno, at that time Attorney General, and Louis Freeh, head of the FBI, and they started bringing their people in to train the Department of Justice and the FBI, and then through that they have now put together training programs for local and state police. Now, this is a Department of Homeland Security report that 2 years ago caused quite an uproar, and it's entitled Right-Wing Extremism, Current Economic Political Climate Fueling Resurgence in Radicalization and Recruitment. That was published by the Department of Homeland Security. When it came out, it caused an uproar among many conservative groups as well as many military veterans groups because, among other things, this DHS targets the military. It says, quote, returning veterans possess combat skills and experience that are attractive to right-wing extremists. DHS INA, that's Intelligence and Analysis, is concerned that right-wing extremists will attempt to recruit and radicalize veterans in order to boost their violent capacities. It goes on to say that right-wing extremism can be divided into those groups, movements, and adherents that are primarily hate-oriented, based on hatred of particular religious, racial, or ethnic groups, and those that are mainly anti-government, rejecting federal authority in favor of state or local authority, or rejecting government authority entirely. It may include groups and individuals that are dedicated to a single issue, such as opposition to abortion or immigration, end quote. Now, among other things, this report referred to veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, and then it made allusion to the Oklahoma City bombing and Timothy McVeigh being a veteran from the first Persian Gulf War. So the American Legion responded very vehemently and said, Quote, the American Legion is well aware and horrified at the pain inflicted during the Oklahoma City bombing, but Timothy McVeigh was only one of more than 42 million veterans who have worn this nation's uniform during wartime. To continue to use McVeigh as an example of the stereotypical disgruntled military veteran is as unfair as using Osama bin Laden as the sole example of Islam, end quote. Now, as a result of American Legion, other veterans groups, conservative groups, pro-life groups, etc., protesting over this, and members of Congress protesting over this, DHS Secretary Janet Napolitano was forced to apologize, sort of. She didn't really apologize. She finally withdrew the report, and she apologized that people were offended by it. Members of Congress and many citizens demanded an investigation of this, saying, well, wait a second, where did this come from, and how is it that the Department of Homeland Security has cast a big net like this, attacking veterans and conservatives, pro-lifers, people who are concerned about immigration, and the danger of this report was it was being disseminated to all of law enforcement. In other words, this is the Department of Homeland Security telling local police, you better be watching out for those returning military veterans, you better be watching out for those pro-life people. If somebody has a bumper sticker about illegal immigrants, they might be a potential terrorist, another Timothy McVeigh. So members of Congress said, well, where did you get this information? What is the provenance or source of this information that is in the report? Secretary Napolitano demurred. She did not want to give out that information. So Americans for Limited Government brought a lawsuit. I'll have to skip this one. A Freedom of Information Act lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security and forced them to, by court order, to release the information. And what do you suppose was the source? Now this is the Department of Homeland Security. They have billions and billions of dollars. They've got hundreds of thousands of employees and investigators and whatnot. One might expect that when they put out a report like that on extremism, that they would have some hard evidence or data to back up their claims. So when they were forced to release their information, where did it come from? Well, here's the printout that they released here. You can see from there, I don't know if you can, most of these are SPLC centered, the Southern Poverty Law Center. So what we see is that the Southern Poverty Law Center, with its political allies in government, has succeeded in hijacking the Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, the FBI, to do their dirty work for them, to present their propaganda to the local police, to present their people, their so-called experts at the SPLC, as trainers for our federal, state, and local police. So the hate map, now bad as it is and as it has been by being given ubiquitous coverage in the media and spreading disinformation through public media like that, far worse is the incorporation of that disinformation into actual official government reports, which then can influence those agencies which are instruments of the state and local governments for actually enforcing laws and taking away people's rights. Now, here's a quote which you can see on the hate map, which I say is a throwaway disclaimer. This is what the Southern Poverty Law Center says. Quote, listing here does not imply a group advocates or engages in violence or other criminal activity, end quote. Now that's a way they can kind of protect themselves and say, well, we didn't say that that group, that Christian group, was a hate group or involved in criminal activity. But this is a lie. they not only imply, they strongly imply the whole way in which they set up every one of their web pages, every one of their intelligence reports to sandwich smear over and over again legitimate, law-abiding Christian patriot groups, conservative organizations, and to sandwich them in between images and stories and text about Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, etc. The whole thing is scientifically created, not just to imply, but to indict these groups and individuals. Now, just have to go on speedily here because we're going to run out of time. The SPLC is infamous for straining to find minuscule or even non-existent connections or ties between an individual, an organization, and some other nefarious, legitimate hate group. They will find that, for instance, they'll list that so-and-so's father's uncle was married to a woman whose grandfather's nephew once went to a Klan meeting in 1944. I mean, and then they'll say that this person is connected to the Klan. It's almost that ridiculous. However, when it comes to, so they have this obsession with what they call the threat from the right, the radical right. They see no threats on the left. They see no threats from any communist, socialist, Marxist, Leninist, Trotskyist, Stalinist, Maoist, Castroite group, any groups like that. Now, this is their page, Teaching Tolerance. And this particular page is instructive because this is their story called An Unconditional Embrace, which puts forward one of their heroes for kids to emulate. This is one that their Teaching Tolerance program is in many schools all throughout the country. And who is it that they're extolling in this particular story? This individual. His name is Bill Ayers. Bill Ayers, of course, is the unrepentant, bomb-throwing, Weather Underground communist terrorist of the 1960s and 70s. Bill Ayers and his wife Bernadine Dorn led a rampage of bombings all across the country, which included, among others, the murder of Timothy Donald, the police officer in San Francisco. He went on the run, was a fugitive for years, and then, because of his connections, he and his wife were able to walk out of fugitive status, FBI's most wanted posters, and step into sinecures as distinguished professors of education. He at the University of Illinois in Chicago, she at the Northwestern University. He is, I said, unrepentant. That is, he has been interviewed numerous times since his return from fugitive status. And he has stated even recently that he does not regret what he did. He does not repudiate violence. He was asked, would he at some time in the future consider doing that again, meaning bombing again. He said he couldn't rule that out. Now, I point this out, this is very, very important because the SPLC has built its credibility upon its saying that it is opposed to violence. And it points to all kinds of groups that are not violent, that are not hateful, Christian groups, etc., that have no record of ever engaging in that, and yet this is who they champion. This, of course, is Professor Ayers back in 1968, his mugshots during the days of rage in Chicago. This is another one of their many experts, Chip Burlett. He's a senior analyst at Political Research Associates. He's a regular writer for the SPLC. He's a longtime activist and former vice president of the National Lawyers Guild. The National Lawyers Guild, oh, this one has a jumble on there. The National Lawyers Guild has been designated by the House Committee on American Activities as, quote, the foremost legal bulwark of the Communist Party. My apologies for this slide here. However, this is what I think is very important. Chip Burlett himself, an SPLC expert, admits that the National Lawyers Guild is, quote, a cacophony featuring cadres from Leninist, Trotskyist, Stalinist, Maoist groups, along with Marxists, anarchists, libertarians, and progressive independents. That's Chip Berlet. He says that rather cheerfully, like, this is a great group. And yet, he is one of the leading experts of the SPLC. Going quickly, James Rucker, this is the Southern Poverty Law Center. He's on their board of directors. He's the executive director and co-founder of thecolorofchange.org. Co-founder, I said. Who's the other co-founder? This man, Van Jones, co-founder with Rucker of colorofchange.org. He's a self-described radical communist. He was the leader of Storm. He was President Obama's former Green Jobs czar. Here's another expert who was awarded Woman of Courage Award by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Her name is Professor Nikki Giovanni. She is a teacher, a professor at Virginia Tech. I have this on there because the SPLC says they're trying to bridge races and fight against hate. She is infamous for promoting hatred. Her poems, so-called, for instance, this is one of them. This was The True Import of Present Dialogue, Black versus Negro by Nikki Giovanni. One of her students put some of her sentiments into practice. You might remember this individual, the Virginia Tech killer Sun Hoi Cho, a student of the SPLC's favorite bard, Professor Nikki Giovanni. Now, am I saying that her political rants in her so-called poetry caused this disturbed student to carry out the violent murder of his fellow students? No, but it's kind of interesting that the media never said a word about this. However, if there had been a conservative professor there on the campus who had uttered any words about affirmative action or illegal aliens, and then a student in one of his classes had carried out something similar to this, you know they would be drawing a cause and effect relationship there, and this professor would be drummed out of the college. Not only that, but they would use it to tag virtually every other conservative professor nationwide. She was given an award by the Southern Poverty Law Center, which actually should be called, renamed the Southern Wealth Enrichment Center. We don't have time to go into the whole details, but I have visited their Poverty Palace in Montgomery, Alabama. I visited Poverty Palace 1 and Poverty Palace 2. They built a multi-million-dollar office there right on the very expensive Tony Capitol Hill, right across the street from the Capitol. But after a couple of years, that wasn't good enough, so they built a second Poverty Palace 2, multi-million-dollar headquarters there. And then they built a multi-million-dollar memorial center as well. They have gone on with many other things. This is Morris Dee's Poverty Palace home, which was featured in a Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous type of photo spread in the Montgomery Advertiser. These are some of the, there's a designer wife. As you'll see from their reports, they have nearly $229 million in assets in their trust fund. So they continue to promote their propaganda nationwide on their hate map, but as I said, the real danger is the way in which they are insinuating themselves into official circles with the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the FBI, and then working their way down to the local level. I went to one of my first Southern Poverty Law Center programs here in Appleton in 2000. Morris Dees came here to Appleton West, had a big crowd, about 1,000 people there. I don't know if anybody else attended that one. But they're carrying out these programs nationwide on a regular basis. Urge you to, we've run out of time, but if, you can pick up a copy of the New American Magazine here, and this article has been reprinted in this particular issue of the SPLC, which also features an article about our Support Your Local Police program. Thank you very much.